over to Pia and Penny, which is of course why you're here this evening. Thank you for coming along. For those of you who haven't come to one of these sessions before or who haven't been to this place before, this building is called Enterprize and we're a startup space. So we're here to help early stage companies that are wanting to grow their business in Tasmania and scale it globally. We're here for basically the people who are just getting started. So you don't necessarily have a lot of skills yet, but you've got a problem that you want to solve in the world and you want to start working on that. So we try and build a really supportive community here where everyone can help one another achieve those goals. And part of that, of course, is learning the skills that you need. And so we've started this program called Startup 6, and the idea is to bundle together 6 talks on a bunch of different topics, run them on Monday nights, 6 weeks in a row, and the idea is hopefully that people will come along to all of them so that you can kind of get an eclectic mix of different skills. So this evening we're going to be hearing from Pia, who currently works at the Examiner, though we'll probably tell you in a moment she's about to move into a new role, and Penny, who previously worked at the ABC Radio, was doing the Drive program locally for a number of years and now has started another new thing where she's off doing her own startup journey. So I won't kind of hog up the introduction, I'll let them both introduce themselves, but what we're going to be talking about tonight is how you actually pitch an idea or a business to the media, how you can become good friends with journalists so that you make their lives easier and they're more likely to actually want to cover your stories, and basically, you know, what happens on the other side of the news desk? What happens with the media professionals who are actually creating the news that everybody reads and listens to? So without further ado, I'll hand over to Pia and Penny and we'll hear what they have to say.
Thanks, James. It's like interstate right. Yeah. So I'm Pia. As James mentioned, I have been with the Examiner, but as of this 7 days right now, I'm unemployed. Next week I will be at the ABC presenting Drive. Actually, I took Penny's job.
Taking my job, yeah, because I worked at the ABC for 10 years in all different roles, from newsroom to rural reporting to mostly being a radio presenter, and I presented across the full spectrum of programs throughout the day. And I recently resigned my position to do what you guys are doing. I've got a startup. You get to choose your own title when you're a startup, so I'm the creative director of a company called Healthy Tasmania. So I'm now having to pitch to people like Pia and pitch to the media. But just before we get started, I want to tell you a quick story because I know you guys will appreciate it because you're small business owners or you've got ideas, you're working in that startup space. It's something that happened to me just as I was on the way here. I ran into a friend of mine. She's in her 60s and she's just this incredible talker, and she told me this story. You might know her. She runs the only place in Tasmania that runs gluten-free or that makes gluten-free bread. And she started it quite late in life when she came into this, and she got onto this niche market and she was running it all. And it's been an incredible success for her. She's learned all this stuff, which you can imagine when you're in your 60s and you're taking this up. But like any small business owner, she's now come to the end of what she wants as a working career, and she's trying to sell it, but she can't sell it. She can't find a buyer. And as I was thinking about it, I just thought, for startups, there's so many stories in that. There's so many interesting points. One, just her. She just tells the story. She's that salt of the earth kind of person. When you hear her talk, she's just incredible. But I think about what she's been through in the last 10 years creating this brand, and I think, is the branding wrong? But I was also thinking, do we want someone from the mainland to buy this, or do we want a Tasmanian person to buy this? I was also thinking, why doesn't anyone in Launceston want to buy this? We should keep it here. And so there were just so many stories on meeting this, and I wonder how many of you can reflect on that. You maybe are at the start of your journey and you want to make sure you've probably got something to sell or something to hang your hat on when you get to the end of your journey at 65. So I just wanted to share that with you. It's something that I happened to be on the way here. That's not really a true story, guys, by the way. That's just an example of how you get a story and you pitch it to the right audience. So maybe what we'll do now is I just asked you quickly in that story, that short story that I told, what you noticed about what was in there, what the important points were. Does anyone have any ideas? Go.
The most important information was at the top.
That's right. Anything else? James?
It was about a person.
It was about a person. Really, really important.
It's local.
It's local, really important, particularly for local media here in Tasmania. Again, that depends who you're pitching to, but definitely here it needs to be local. Anything else? Taz?
Tailoring it to your audience.
Yep, telling to the audience. Anything else?
Yeah, so create some questions for the audience of the story to then ponder and comment on social media.
Straight away, yep, perfect. The other thing that I tried to do, but in my ad-libbing I may not have done, is I tried to pitch it to you guys because you might be interested because you're business owners or you've got ideas. But pretty much, they're the kind of 4 or 5 things that we're going to go through with you now.
Yep. So that was basically a great idea of what we call the pub test. So the first thing to think about when you're pitching a story to the media is how would you tell your mates at the pub about that story? So if you saw a dog getting run over in Patterson Street on the way to the pub, you would go into the pub and say, guys, I just saw this dog getting run over. It was really traumatic. There was this old lady on the side. She ran out to help. I thought she was going to die. So the crux of the information is there first. Obviously then when you're sitting there with your mates, the next question would be, what happened next? So then you follow through. Oh, well, it's all right. We managed to save the dog. Someone took it to the vet. It was okay. Next question would be, who did the dog belong to? So you actually step us through the who, what, when, where, why, based on the way you would tell the story to your mates at the pub, because that automatically gets the most important information out first.
And then I might have asked, did you get a photo?
Most importantly, did you get a video?
Did you get a video with a graphic warning content? Great.
Always.
Yeah, great. Content warning. So that's the most important bit. When you're doing it, we have in our minds all this stuff that we know is important about a story and is important about a project that's important to you about your business. You've got to think about who your audience is first up, and then how you're telling it to them to get them in. So it's like pitching for anything. If you've been hanging out here at Enterprize for a little while, I'm sure you would have heard about pitching. When you're talking to the media, it's about that first pitch, that first minute. It's really important. They're busy people. They got a lot to do.
Yeah, they're not going to sit there and read a full A4 page worth of email. They're going to read the first couple of lines, see if they're interested, and click away to something else or continue to read. So I guess the crux of this point is, why do we as the media care about your story? And you need to tell me that in the first sentence. This goes to what Penny was just talking about.
Yeah, who is the story for? And this is really important, and this takes a fair bit of, I guess you need to do, well, not so much that much research. Think about how you consume media. That's always a really helpful thing. Think about what you watch, what you read, what you listen to, what you scroll through, and then work out where that your story is going to fit. How's the audience going to interact with it? What are they going to do? And then you can work out who you're pitching it to. As we mentioned before at the start, here in Tasmania, we want local stories. There are less and less journalists in Tasmania. There's less and less local content being produced. If you've got a winner of a story, usually that is positive, particularly there are positive stories because government departments give us enough negative stories. Then that's what we love. So if you can make it local, about a local person first, a local issue second probably, that's what we love. So give us the local angle. If there's stuff that you can do to make the story sexy, we know this, you guys know this, we know there's a thing called clickbait. While we don't like clickbait, the whole premise behind clickbait is what still sells stories. If you know there are certain journalists that report on certain things, if you know that a certain media outlet has been covering a big story a lot and there's something that you can add to it, zone in on them. You can tell them it's an exclusive, you're giving it to them only, or you're giving it to them first and you might pass it on to someone else second. That's pretty good. But then again, once again, why does that person care about your story? So there's a few things you can do here, and you can jump in. I like to start with the radio stuff and go to the print stuff. If you're going to tailor your story for radio, first of all, know which radio outlet you're going to go to. You might be wanting to go to a few of them. Think about the time of day you want it on the radio. Now, breakfast radio definitely gets the biggest audience. but they have the shorter spots. So you get maximum 3 minutes on breakfast radio. So if it's an event or something like that, bang, you'll get on, no worries. If it's a longer story that you maybe want turned into an online story later because you've given it really, really good, guts in there, then afternoon radio stuff's really good. So that's either that could be either your early afternoon stuff or your drive stuff. They've got a little bit longer. On the early afternoon program, you've probably got up to 10 minutes. You could even create a forum and get it going for half an hour if you wanted to pitch that. In drive radio, you've probably got 5 to 8 minutes, which sounds like a really, I don't know, some people say it goes really, really quickly once you're on air. Other people think it takes forever. If you want to get on something like the morning show, then you usually want to have a very, very current affairs angle to it, and that'll help you get on the morning show. So that's what you think about, but again, it's always about people first and the local story first. That'll get you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would agree the same is true, certainly across print and TV as well. It's all about the story. In terms of print, it's a little bit of a changing landscape. Traditionally, people have had rounds and they only do stuff about that particular topic, in which case you need to know. And this is just a matter of being aware, like Penny said, of the news that's coming across your desk, that's on your screen, that you see in the paper when you're picking up your coffee. Just take note of what the byline is on who's writing all the health stories. If you've got a great new health app, Penny is doing some great stuff in health at the moment, so she would identify who's writing all the stories about health so that she knows who to pitch her story to. The other thing to be aware of, I think, Penny's got a really strong background in ABC. I've got a bit of a mix across ABC and commercial media. There's a really big difference between the two and you need to be aware of it. So ABC has very, very stringent, very, very strict editorial policies. They will not promote a business. So if you're going there expecting essentially an ad, you're not going to get it. So that comes back to who is the person and what is the issue.
We are more than happy to talk about the person behind the business, but we're not going to endorse anything ever. So I cannot say that is a great business, get down there, you need to run this place. That is just an absolute no-no. But I can say this is an incredible story that's happening in your local town. This person started from here, or whatever the story is. It's a slight change, but it's a big change in the way that you pitch the story. The ABC also too doesn't want to talk about sponsors. We can say a throwaway line like there's been plenty of local sponsors that have helped us with this, but we won't talk about sponsors because basically that's the same thing, that's endorsing. So again, that just, whether it's commercial or not, that's about the story being the story. The audience don't really care about the advertising part of it. That's going to send them away. And so what the journo cares about, what the managers care about, is that people are going to buy their papers, they're going to turn on their radio station, and they're going to get good content that's relevant to them and that is current. So they're your two big things. It needs to be relevant to the audience and it needs to be current, because it's news.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the big thing with print is you would have seen you have very, very small stories that have a minimal amount of text and a big picture, and then you've got those big full page feature write-ups. So I guess what you guys want to know is, how do you take your story from a 4-paragraph picture story up to a full page feature? And once again, it comes back to the story. So James is absolutely fantastic at this. He will come to you and say, there's this great new thing happening, here are some of the angles, here are some of the people that you can talk to, here are some of the issues. I know you've been talking about the NBN lately at the Examiner. Well, this is a great story that talks about that. So automatically I know that there's enough content in that to fill a full page. So we can't emphasise enough, it comes back to the story and the person.
And two, with TV, the other thing that you're dealing with TV that's a little bit different to radio and print is it's definitely statewide. So all of the TV news that we have in Tasmania, they are statewide bulletins. And the way bulletins tend to run, you'll get the big stories of the day at the top, and then as you go down, you tend to get more the community type stories, and then you get the sport and the weather. That's pretty much how they run. So you're generally having to convince a news editor or a cos who is taking in the whole of the state. They're trying to work out which is going to be the biggest story of the day, and that's how they line up their bulletin. So you need to give them a reason. There are a lot of places, like Newton only has one journal and one camera on in the north of the state. Southern Cross still usually have two. The ABC usually have two cameras on. They often have more journals because they're writing other stuff for two cameras. So to be able to get that news director to say, right, your story is worth sending a camera to, you've got to give them a headline, you've got to give them pictures. We'll get to this stuff later. But you've really got to think about what's going to be there for them to send what is a very precious resource these days of their cameras to you, considering that those cameras are also covering the northwest of the state as well. So it's longing and the northwest for stories up here.
So this is just to give you guys a bit of a background so you understand the way that we approach a story. So what is it that we're picking stories based on? So there are a couple of things. News currency, is it something that's relevant now? Don't pitch me something that happened 2 months ago. Pitch it to me when it's a week away from happening. So the older it gets, the less currency it has. We've said it once, we'll say it again, we'll probably say it many more times. It needs to be local. You know, local media outlets don't want to report on something that's happening on the mainland. If there's something on the mainland that's happening that's a massive news story and you've got a local angle, that's great. We want to know about that, but don't just pitch us a straight story that has nothing to do with our readership. So that comes back to, as Penny said, understanding the audience.
And just on that, if there is a big national, international story that's happening and it's taking up the first 3 or 4 stories in the paper each day or the bulletin, and you've got an angle here that relates to it, that is a great in. Because all the journos here locally, they want to get on that story.
I was about to say, that's absolute gold, because they'll be looking for it anyway.
Yeah, so they're looking and they're calling their contacts, trying to find out a link to this big, massive story that's happening. If you've got something, then they're going to love you. You just need to say, you know that big story? I've got a local person involved. And they'll be like, right, tell me about it.
Yeah. Uniqueness, you all know it. It's social media, in and out. The weird stuff sells. Yeah, everyone likes to read about interesting, weird things. So the more unique the story is.
Talent is everything. And if you're going to be the talent yourself, I know how scary that can be. I guess you just need to trust yourself that you know why you want to do this story. You're passionate about what you're doing. That's why you put your whole life behind it. So you just need to really concentrate on being able to tell your story well. That might mean that you aren't the talent. It might mean you pull someone else in. We'll get to a number of different ways that you can go about making sure. Oh, sorry, I should say talent is the interviewing. We call them talent in the media.
Yeah,
right?
if we ever do track out jargon, which is actually one of our points later on, do just put your hand up and ask us what we're talking about.
So yeah, good talent is really important. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah. The timing, essentially what we were talking about before, if you're doing something that's really relevant to a hot button issue, we need to know about it. And that is the very best time to pitch your idea. And once again, the ability to value add. So everyone across the board reaches a large part of their audience online. And online is not just a single medium anymore. So if you go to radio, you're not just going on the radio, you're also going to need pictures. Ideally, you're going to need a video. And you're obviously going to have to talk on the radio. Similarly, with print, it's not just an article in the paper anymore. So in print, you're looking at photos. You're actually looking at as many photos as you can get. They want galleries. They want quantity of photos. They want videos. They want social media embeds. So if I was writing a story on Enterprise, one of the first things I'd do is I'd go onto the Enterprise Facebook, I'd go onto the Enterprise Twitter account, and I would have a look through to see which of their posts I can take to embed in my story to give it a lot more substance and a lot more content. So the ability to value add is becoming more and more important as everyone reaches their audience online.
And we also want to know what your network is like. I'm Curly up the back who's multi-skilling at the moment. When she comes in to do chats every Wednesday, is it still
Thursday?
Every Thursday, sorry, on the radio. She'll often tweet that she's coming in and we'll see her take a selfie in the studio there. Those little things really help because you know that we're reaching Curly's network as well as the local radio network. So we're reaching a new audience, which can be great. And she'll often put on there, you know, you can listen to me at this, you know, station with a link to how you can listen online and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
So that stuff is value add too, if you can tell people how you're going to help promote the fact that this is on.
So I guess going a bit more into the timing that we mentioned, the time of day, the particular day, the time of year that you pitch a story is all vitally important to whether it gets picked up or not. So I'll give you a hot tip. If the government doesn't want you to report on something, they will release it at 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon. So if you...
Off school holidays.
Off school holidays. Yeah. So if you don't want your story picked up, send an email at 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. However, if you want us to pick up your story, which I'm assuming you all do, have a little bit of a think about when you contact us. So you want to pick slow news days. So Mondays, public holidays when not much is happening. School holidays, everything sort of quietens down over school holidays. So they're all really good times to pitch stories because we're scratching for content anyway. This is one of the biggest held secrets, I think, of the media. We are desperate for stories. We always want cracking yarns. That's a big misconception. They're not just, you know, we don't necessarily always have a pile of them. So these are the times that you can send through your stories and you will have a better chance of being noticed, being looked at, being picked up. 10 a.m. to 11 a.m, this is more in terms of if you're placing a media call or if you're trying to organise an interview. And this is particularly print-based. So my experience in print, just so you know how the newsroom works, we come in at about 9 or 9:15, we go into a news conference where the editor and all the journos sit down, they talk about what they're doing for the day, and basically it's the agenda setting for the day, so we know what's on. So if you organise a media call at 9:15, chances are you'll struggle to get people there because people haven't planned their days and they've got other conferences and stuff like that on. Similarly, think about yourselves, if you're knocking on at 9 o'clock, by the time you factor in travel time, getting all your stuff together, dragging a photographer along with you, we're not going to be able to get to a job at 9 o'clock. So be a bit smart about when you're scheduling your media calls and when you're organising your interviews. I was saying to Penny before, I reckon in print anything after about 11:30 is a good time. The government tends to take those 10:30, 11 o'clock kind of spots. They generally take precedence because, unfortunately, we have to go to them. So be aware of that, the timing. And also be aware of deadlines. So in print, we're working to deadlines. Most people knock off at 5:30. I'm sure you all agree you don't necessarily want to stay back till 7 o'clock every night, particularly if it's not your particular passion project. So when you're organising media calls and you're organising interviews, give people time to get back to the office and file the story before 5:30. So I would recommend basically anything before about 3:34 would be all right, a good time. Anything past that and you're pushing it in, getting in the next day's paper, they might put it in the following days. But once again, the older it is, the more news currency it loses, and the further back in the paper or online it will be pushed.
Just with a look at how the ABC rolls there is with the radio, every different program has a different deadline, as I'm sure you can work out. Sometimes if you've got an event on, you can't help but have to schedule your launch or whatever at the time that the event is, which might be a 9:15. I've got one coming up. You know about that. So sometimes it can't be helped, in which case you put out a media alert the day before, and then you put out a media release on the morning, and you would call everyone and let them know when they need to be there and get an idea of who's going to come. So you actually call and make sure that they are going to come. But basically what I would do as the drive presenter, I start at about 9:30. My show doesn't go to air until 4 and I'm live between 4 and 6. So I would get in up to about 12. I'm just getting my head around exactly what's on, what's happening today, what's happening around Tasmania, where I think the stories are going to be, what's happened on the morning's program that morning, how I'm going to follow it up locally, like a Northern Tasmanian based stuff later that afternoon. And so if people start kind of ringing from maybe like 11 to 12 to 1 to 2, that's perfect. Sometimes, as a few people in this room might know, it's 3:30 and I'm calling them going, we need someone to talk to about something, have you got a story for me? So it's not like we've got 1,000 things to pick from. We are searching every day. And the reason why we don't have 1,000 things to pick from is because we don't want to do the same old story over and over again. We don't want to talk about what everyone else is talking about. We want to do it differently. We want to do it better. So we sometimes do have that time where we are actively out looking and calling people to make sure that we can reach our deadlines.
And sorry, just on that point, Penny, if we don't want to do the same old stories, if you've got a story and the ABC's already picked it up, but you really want the examiner to run it, you can still pitch it to them, but you need to take the story forward. So you need to tell them what angle they can do that makes it a different story. So, trying off the top of my head to think of a
same thing. So,
example.
particularly, so the breakfast show on radio in the morning, they might come in, they might read the front page of the Examiner, because that's what they do, basically, to find their story of the day. They're relying on what they can find online. It's early, it's 7:15, and what's on the local papers and what people are talking about on social media. That's how they find their story. And if there is a story on the front page of the paper that says that, you know, there was a fire at Enterprise overnight, tempt fate.
Peter's been making funny noises, but
and there are some great, you know, shots or whatever on the front page of the paper. We'd probably cross live down here to a journo, but then James might have something great for us to say that we actually had this safe in the corner of the room that had all the important stuff in it. It'd be a great story. Do you want to talk about that? Because we didn't realise it survived when the Examiner were there last night. So that's an awesome way to take it forward. And then no doubt the Examiner would then pick up on that and it would go again. So then you've got this and it just keeps going and keeps going.
Yeah, so that's how to build traction with your stories is, I mean, yeah, you don't necessarily want to give it all away at the outset. You don't want to annoy media organisations by purposely holding things back, but if you're able to, you know, since the ABC spoke to us, we've had 600 people sign our petition and now it's being taken to the Parliament next week. That's taking the story forward. So it's anything new information. It's always about, well, the key's in the name really, it's news, it needs to be new. The other one, check if there are any other major events. So don't pitch us a story on the day Princess Diana dies. Probably no one's going to be that interested. Don't pitch us stories on Anzac Day.
Don't pitch us stories on Budget Day or when there's an election tomorrow. Unless it's something to do with the election or budget, then definitely.
I was going to say, unless
Get into it.
you
But
can
it's
offer
got
us
nothing to do with it.
a local angle on that event.
Yeah.
The only time we want to hear about it, and bear in mind that it might not be picked up until the following day. So the budget, they'll have all the big budget splash, and then it'll be the following day that they'll be looking for reactions. That's when we want your story.
And you can be quite clever about it, particularly, you know, with my new business owner hat on. There's been a lot, for example, about the NBN at the moment and it not working. If no one knows who you are and you are just starting as a new business and you want to get your name out there's a front page story saying who you are, what you do, where you're from, and the trouble you're having with the NBN. I mean, that's a great story for the paper, but it talks about the person, it talks about the new, the startup community here in Launceston, so there's a lot of different ways. I mean, you might not want to be bagging the NBN, so you need to think about all of that sort of stuff, but just think about different opportunities for you. It doesn't always have to be about, the big project you're working on. It can be getting your business name and what you do out in other ways. And people go, oh, I didn't know we had one of those in Launceston. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've touched on this, but be aware of different outlets' needs. So, interviewing for TV, interviewing for radio, interviewing for print are all very different. So, TV, they're going to want more than just a stand-up piece-to-camera interview. They're going to need to be able to cut that interview together. So they're going to need other shots that they can cut in to make a full package. So think before they get there what some overlay shots are that they can do. So we're doing a story about this great talk that's being held at Enterprise. I'm going to interview Penny, but a great shot maybe, we can have her sitting down at the desk typing something. let's, we've got heaps of people in the room, so you get a shot of people, sitting and listening avidly because they're glued to what we're saying, that sort of thing. So have a think about what other things that they'll need.
Take a look at when you, I don't know how many of you have video editing skills, but just watch the news and see whether there are people talking, see when the interviewee's talking, see when the news presenter's talking, take a look at the images that are in the background, and then you'll get an understanding of how they put those packages, as we call them, together. So it might be Peter saying, yeah, it's really important what we're doing tonight at Enterprise, and then a shot of you guys go, oh yes, that's really interesting. While the news presenter over the top says, and they'll be having 5 more sessions over the next 5 weeks as part of the, what's it called, James?
Startup 6.
Startup 6, there you go.
For print, when we say print these days, it's really not newspapers anymore. A lion's share of it is actually online. So, as I mentioned before, the more you can offer a journalist, the better. The easier it is for them to put those things in their story, the better. So, rather than me having to go out and film a video of Penny talking and you're, listening avidly, if I know that I can click on to the Enterprise Facebook page and get a video off there without having to do it myself, I've just saved myself an hour out of my workday of making a video, but I can still have a video involved in my story. So what can you offer them that will make it stand out, make it different and value add to it?
Radio still needs, number one, good speaking talent. We are an audio form. You need to be able to tell your story. People need to be able to understand what you say. That said, our radio still thinks digital first. So what we want is a short video, something we can grab maybe while you're in the studio, something we can grab if we're out reporting on site that is just a 1 minute. You know how things on Facebook work, anything under 1 minute is just absolutely gold if you want it to be shareable. So we're definitely looking for those things. We're thinking digital first, we're thinking in pictures, but we want you to be good speakers. We can't put you on the radio if you're not going to excite our audience. That's our number one rule.
This is a phrase that gets bandied around the newsroom a lot. And I'm just going to ask you, if you were all making a cup of orange juice, which orange would you choose? I'm hoping you're all going to say that you would choose the orange on the left because you get a hell of a lot more out of it. So is the juice worth the squeeze comes back to value add. So this is great interviews, this is photos, this is videos, this is talking points, which is something that's particularly relevant for radio, but applies across the board. If it's something that will get ABC or the Examiners or Win News or Southern Cross TV's online audience talking, if it will get them posting comments on Facebook, that's fantastic. That's what you're after.
You're basically turning a 300-word story or a 5-minute radio interview into an hour on the radio, or however many comments turns up on Facebook. Yeah.
And a quick hint for you guys, in print, we will track our Facebook comments and we will see what they're saying. So if people are talking on our Facebook page, we'll say, that's what people are talking about, that's what they want to know, that's the story we need to do. So stories will actually come out of the reaction that we get online, which is the fantastic opportunity that online presents for you guys, because if you can share it through your networks and get people talking about it, us as a news organisation will go, people care about this, therefore we need to cover it.
So it's about being current and relevant. Again, what we're trying to do is reflect the local audience here. So as a newspaper, as a radio station, as a TV station, all we're trying to do is reflect the city that we live in or the area that we live in.
And make it easy for us guys. Don't ring us up to pitch a story and then say, I can't talk to you for 2 weeks, or sorry, I don't want you to take our photo, or I've got an hour on Friday between like 11:30 and 12:30, but that's like my only opportunity. Make it easy for us. We're all busy, you're all busy. We aren't going to go to something that's a lot of effort for little gain, so you need to make it super low effort for massive gain, and that's the way to get the media not just to cover that story, but to keep coming back to you and back to you and back to you and getting repeat stories, because I know that I can go and talk to James. He's going to make it so easy for me that I'll walk in that door and I'll walk out half an hour later with everything I need. So who do you think I'm going to think of next time I need to do a story about startups? Am I going to speak to the person that I know I'm going to have to wait 2 weeks to interview? Or am I going to go to James, who the next day will give me half an hour everything I need?
And it's also more than that too. If I do a good story about, say, you're pitching something, it's an event that you've got on, you're launching something to do with your new business, and we talk about that, we do the story, and the story's great. Next time I'm talking about your industry on the radio, or I'm looking for someone for a comment from your industry, I'll go, oh, what about that guy Dave? He was talking about that, and he was awesome. So I'll ring you and go, I need you to talk about this. Do you reckon you can? And so that's what keeps going and what builds your credibility as well, as I guess an expert even in the community.
Yeah. Fundamentally though, what it all comes down to is building relationships. So getting to know the people that you're dealing with in the media, and this is something that Penny with her small business hat on is excellent at.
Starting. Trying to do that.
So it's getting to know particular journalists. So me as a journalist, I love doing human interest. I love finding out the why of stories. So it doesn't take long to look at my writing, my sound packages, anything that I do. It becomes obvious pretty quickly where my areas of interest lie, and it will be the same for every other journo. And so basically, you wouldn't pitch a story about dogs to the Financial Review. Similar sort of rules apply. So if you have a fantastic, cracking human interest story, you're going to want to go to the person that you know loves human interest stories. So be aware of what journos like and be familiar with the different outlets that they work in.
And little things too. If you can find a way to follow them on Facebook or follow their Instagram feed, it's not stalking. It is a little bit, but and you get to know them a bit better. So I mean, we're all busy, particularly when you're doing what you're doing. You don't have time to read the paper every day. You're not listening to 10 hours of radio. You're probably not home in time to watch the news bulletin. So it's really hard to keep up to date. But if your Facebook feed is full of both stories, you know, from Pia, but also too, she may host you. She may not want to be your friend. A lot of us do try and, you know, we have certain. I reckon we have certain forms of social media that I have open to everyone, and then I have others that I keep, you know, just for my friends and family. But if you can get on one of them, then, you know, you can start to understand what they're like a bit more. Yeah, it does sound a lot like stalking.
You know, it's as simple as make the time to have a quick coffee with someone, make that personal connection. It's much harder to say no to a face, a person that you know, than it is to say no to a name on the end of an email. Knowing what stories to pitch, it would astound you the number of times I've been talking to someone and they're just like, oh yeah, but you know, like the other day I was just doing this thing. And I'm like, sorry, what? You know, like it was just this thing that I was doing. And I go, that is an absolutely fantastic story. Why didn't you tell me about it? Oh, I didn't think it was that, you know, I didn't think it was that interesting. And it's a fantastic story that gets missed. So knowing when to pitch a story is really important. Don't necessarily discount it. If you think you've got a great story, pitch it, and you'll soon get the feedback of what it's like, whether it's worth a great, fantastic full-page feature or, you know, a drive interview or whatever it is. But at least put it out there, because if it's not out there, no one's going to pick it up.
It comes back to the pub test, and you can do your own pub test on your own social media feeds. You can say you did this today. If 20 of your friends start commenting and asking questions and going, that's great, well then you know that's the story that you want to pitch to the media. If people aren't talking to you about, you can do it around the table when you're having dinner. You can start, you know, we do this in the office when we're trying to work out talk back topics. We go, so this is what I want to do. If no one talks about it or no one's got anything to say, it's not going on the radio. If everybody just starts telling their stories, we usually get caught up for about half an hour hearing the stories, then that's the talk back point that we go for. So sometimes you don't know what you don't know. You're involved with it. You don't know that that's the story because it's just what you do and it's what you do every day. So going back to that pub test, which you can do with people, you can do it online, you can do it however you want. It will give you an idea of which is the part of the story that people are going to be interested in. Yeah. But it's often about people. It's often about you and how you do things. or how someone in your organisation does things, or someone that you've met and how what you do is impacting them. So people stories.
And if you've made that personal connection, you can actually pick up the phone and call the journalist and be like, hey, I don't know if this is a story or not, but I'm doing X, Y, Z, would you be interested? Yeah. So before you go to all the effort of doing this great big media release and doing this great big pitch, just ring up, pick up the phone, ring them and find out. And that's the huge benefit of making those personal connections. If you can give, it doesn't hurt just once in a while to give a story to one news outlet and not tell everyone else at the same time. That goes a long way. Like, I love Penny, but there is a lot of competitiveness between outlets. Yeah? We don't want our front page to also be the Mercury's front page. So if you, once in a while, throw us a bone, say, oh look, I've got this great yarn, but I tell you what, I'll hold off on giving it to any other media until you've run it.
And that can be in timing too. So for example, you can know that it's not going to make the paper if you put something out at 7 o'clock at night or whatever, you embargo it till 7 o'clock at night. He's going to make the breakfast radio program, he's going to make the morning news bulletins. So it'll annoy the papers, here we are being competitive, because they don't get the front page, but it's going to be leading the news all day. So and then you want to offer the paper something extra, so then it can lead their paper the next day, which goes back to what we're talking about. Of course, this is all, it's just granted that you guys have got awesome stories to tell that are going to be front pages and headline bulletins, of course.
But you would be amazed the number of people that have awesome stories to tell.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
I spent 3 years where I basically just would rock up in a small town somewhere in Tasmania, usually with a population under 500 people, and I had to find 2 hours of radio content. So that was 10 stories. And we'd rock up in the morning, and we would come home with 20 just from knocking on people's doors, because they were the things that people would always talk to me about. It wasn't that I was reporting on what Will Hodgman did today, or who's complaining about Fed White this week, or whatever, or the health system, or whatever. It was always about those people's stories. And she was incredible. Where did you find her? How did she talk to you? I couldn't believe you walked in the front door, and it was like I was there. That's what people want.
And what goes around comes around. So something that Penny mentioned before, if I know that I'm doing a story on dolls and you happen to be great with dolls, if I know that I can ring you up and you'll either come on and help me out, or you'll put me in contact with the right people, that goes a long way, because then there's a little bit of give and take. So it doesn't always have to be about your story, your business, what you guys need. If you can help us out every now and then it goes around, and you'll find much more positive relationships. And as Penny mentioned before, it actually does you guys a favour as well, because it puts you up as a bit of an expert. You can become a bit of a go-to person on a particular topic. So it really is that circular thing. You help us, we help you. It's all, a fine, merry, dandy relationship.
And finding new people is really important. So we love Saul Leslie, but we're sick of hearing about him. Like every time we comment on the economy, it's Saul who's talking about it. If we can get a new expert who is young and excited and has got different things to focus on, great. And that's who we're always looking for. People are hesitant, they're scared, they don't want to put their money where their mouth is. Totally understand all of that. But if you can get a few ways in so you can practice talking about stuff you're confident with, then later it works both ways. We've got a new person that we can go to that none of the other media outlets are going to, because we've worked up that relationship. And we'll put you on a panel with Saul.
Be prepared, but don't plan. So if you want us to turn up at 1 o'clock, don't ring us at 12 o'clock and ask if we're going to be there. The exception to this is if you have a fantastic relationship with the journo and you ring them up and say, oh my God, I'm so sorry to send you the release. Are you able to make it?
I just today one. Hey, I'm here right now doing a thing. It's pretty cool. Can you come out?
So while it works for James, don't rely on it. Yep. Unless you have that relationship, really don't rely on it. Even if you have that relationship, they might have something
Doesn't
else
always
to
work
do.
for me.
Yeah.
But it does often work for radio, because
Yeah.
as I said, we're filling 10 stories a day. That's 2 people. So you've got your radio presenter and your producer. You find 10 stories 5 days a week, every day. Now, there isn't a story in North Tasmania that I haven't talked about in some way or form over 10 years. Like, that is a lot of stories. So just try your luck. If you've got a story and it's, well, I'd say the first people to go to, if it's last minute, is call your local radio station and just go, probably can't send anyone down, but I can just talk to them on the phone in half an hour for 5 minutes. It's this brand new thing. What do you reckon? We don't need a lot. If you can tell us the stuff and we can trust you, we don't need a lot of planning time. We're not writing anything. It's live radio. It's live to air. You're telling us the story. You're the expert.
The other thing is have these planned, but don't be bound to them. So the worst thing, the thing that'll make a photographer curl up and die inside is, I thought, I've got this great idea for a picture, and I thought that you could sit here, and then I'll stand here, and then you could take a photo from over there. Yep, that's automatically going to put your photographer offside. The alternative way to approach that is, hey, we've got some really funky looking spaces in this room over here. Don't know if you want to use them or not, but you know, that's a really bright, colourful space. We've got these people here for you to use if you want them. So give them the options, which comes to the have options planned, but don't be bound to them because they might not like any of them. They have this other idea that they've come up with in their head, which uses none of them, but you've got to trust them. Yeah, they know what they're doing. They do it for a job.
And they're going to do it anyway because they're running the show. They're going to do it their way, not your way.
Yeah. Whip through really quickly how and when to write a media release.
Yeah, so I guess it depends. Definitely for big events, launches and things like that, a media release is a good idea. If there's a lot of detail, a media release is a good idea. You don't want to lead with the boring stuff, but have it in there. Or have links to the boring stuff so that journalists can refer to it later, but that's not going to help pitch your story. But it's a good way to get that detail across. So even you as the talent, you don't have to be quoted saying the boring stuff, you don't have to talk about the boring stuff, you can leave it up to journalists to put it in there somehow in a way that works for them. Details are correct, oh my gosh. The amount of times you ring someone, which is the contact on the media release, and it's not the right contact on the media release, or they just don't put a phone number, put nothing.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah. Can't stress that enough. Just double check, triple check, check again.
Yeah.
Make sure you get the details correct.
I've put the don't get confused about PR and media. So that's the difference between the story and wanting to watch out for your business and your brand. Now both are very important. But if you want to get a story written up, the story is more important. If it's a good story, it will reflect well on your brand. So don't hold back on details, don't hold back on stuff because you're too worried that maybe someone will misconstrue it the wrong way. Be smart about it, you want to be careful, but we get so frustrated. For example, things are more and more tightly controlled when it comes to a lot of big organisations. One that comes to mind is just before the floods hit last year and the dams were low in Tasmania. If you lived here, you wouldn't have missed it. It was all anyone talked about for about 3 months. Where are we going to, the light's going to go out? What happened? 2 months ago, I met a bloke who worked at Hydro who was awesome. He was the guy that I wanted to talk to for 3 months, but the government wouldn't put him up. Hydro wouldn't put him up. They were tightly controlling it all. He had all the answers. He was the guy who was on the ground. He was the guy doing the interesting stuff. The modelling he had. I was like, you just needed to put that out. People would have eaten it up. But they were so careful about it being a bad story for either Hydro or for the government that they didn't do it. Now, I think that's a huge missed opportunity. So that's the balancing up between PR and the story and what people are going to like. It's hard, but just if you're pitching a media release, then it's about the story first.
Yeah. And be aware, you have your agenda, which is to get your story, your brand, whatever out there. We also have our agenda, which is to get the story out there, to get people interested in reading our stuff, listening to our stuff, watching our stuff. So, yeah, bear that in mind when you're pitching stuff to us, because something that you will hear in newsrooms is if you want an ad, take out an ad. Yep, we're not giving ads. There's a difference between advertising and editorial. Editorial is about the story. Advertising is about go and buy this great thing, it's fantastic. Yep, you pay for one, you don't pay for the other. Story is king. Have we said it enough?
So, but I don't know where you fit on that. So depending on who you think is most important, the king or the queen, these days it's really hard to know. if you've got something that you think is really shareable and will go berserk, but it's just a little cute animal doing something funny, that's still awesome. The media outlets are still going to love that because they're going to get a heap of people sharing their stuff. So it's, you know, you've got to think about shareable content when you do it. That's what people want now. Yeah, and I'd put King and Queen around the other way. I don't know.
Also, the other thing, if you know, if something goes up on the ABC Facebook page or the ABC website, if something goes up on the Examiner website, share it across your networks. If I know that when I'm doing a story, you're going to circulate it amongst 500 people that are in your networks, that's great for me because I know I've got 500 readers automatically attached to that story. Yeah, so share it in your own networks as well. Everyone wants to be good talent.
They do. We want everyone to be good talent.
Once again, it comes back to knowing the media that you're speaking to and tailoring what you're saying to them. So, print, we're going to want a couple of cracking quotes. Just a couple. We don't care about all the fluff that goes around it. We don't care about the colour. We'll put that in ourselves. We just want a couple of cracking quotes that sums up what you're about in a sentence. So give that to us. Make it really easy. Don't bury it in half an hour's worth of background.
Radio news bulletins, they want 3 pars and a grab. So it's 3 sentences and a grab. That grab is usually about 25 seconds. So say your things in about 25 seconds. And that's also less.
So what do you mean by a grab?
A grab, is your quote. So if I go out to a press conference or to interview you and I want to turn that into a news story, the way that I'll do it is the newsreader will read 3 sentences saying, you know, there was a presentation tonight at Enterprise about how to pitch to the media. About 40 people showed up. It's part of a series of presentations that are going on for 6 weeks. James Riddle, as the founder, said, and then you play a grab of what James has said. So, and James said what James says needs to be about 25 seconds, max. I think it's 18 to 26 they work on, something like that.
Know the story and stay focused on it. So this comes back to that pub test. What is the first thing you tell your mates when you get into the pub? That's what you need to be focusing on. So if we're doing a story about how your kid is a new child genius, I don't want to be hearing about how your grandma looks after that kid on Wednesday afternoons. Not that relevant to the story. Yeah? So stay focused on what the story's about.
I'm going to add something there which is going to confuse the hell out of you.
Sorry, that's for print.
Yeah.
Unless your grandma is a ninja.
Yeah!
There's a whole other story.
No, well, there's nothing better than when you're listening to a story and you think you know that it's going to go like this, and then suddenly the Jen asks a question and wow, it goes up there. So, if you're asked the question, don't get to, I mean, unless you're trying to be a politician, don't just keep coming back to the points. If you're asked a question and they want to go with it, you'll be able to work it out. I mean, it's like normal conversation that you have with your friends every day. Go with it and give them something great and just keep going. Because there's nothing more annoying with journalists, with politicians, when they get asked questions but they keep saying the same thing because they're staying on message. You guys don't want to do that.
Yeah. I guess just make sure it's relevant to what we're
Make sure it's
talking about.
relevant and yeah, answer the questions that you're asked. That's what it is.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's the crux of it. Also background us before we talk to you or before we go on air with you. So that gets a lot, that works a lot of that out before you actually get on air. And it also means that we can do the boring stuff, the details, it's going to be on at this time at such and such a place. We don't need to talk about that with you. We can put that in ourselves. So if you give us all the background, send it to us. 5 minutes before I chat to you, that's when we need to hear that stuff, not necessarily live on air.
Yeah, that's just the boring stuff. That's really important, and it's really important for your project, but it's not the engaging stuff. So it's all about engaging your audience, and they can read that at the end. It's footnotes.
Yeah. And trust. Sorry, I'm jumping to the bottom point here. I'm getting all out of whack. Trust the person that you're speaking to, that they will make sure that they get those important details in there, but trust them that they know how to tell the story to engage their audience and their readers or their listeners or their watchers. So trust them that they're going to do that right. There's nothing worse than having someone trying to micromanage your story, because I don't think you've put the bit about the event being at such and such a place in, you know, the first paragraph. It doesn't need to be in the first paragraph, because you put it in the first paragraph, the readers will have switched off and they're not going to read about your amazing story. So trust the people that you're working with.
The thing about the audience, this is particularly important, I think, for all things. What are they doing when they're listening or they're hearing or they're reading of your story? If it's on breakfast radio, you can say stuff like, if you got out of bed this morning and, you know, there was no milk in the freezer, there's a great way for you to get milk or whatever. I do a delivery service. Depends what you're selling. But try and make it relevant to what they're doing right now. You know, where are they going to be looking at their social feed? Where are they going to be reading the paper? Is it at the kitchen table with the rest of the... you know, try and think about that kind of stuff, and you can make connections then with your audience. And people get... I mean, even I could have interview with someone from the Examiner tomorrow, and you know, I've been doing this stuff for ages and I'm nervous about that. What am I going to say? Which bits is she going to take out of it? Is she going to get the bits that I want? Is she going to get the right bits? If you're passionate about it, you know your stuff. So you've got to trust, if you're wanting to do a story with the media, it's because you know your stuff and you're passionate about something. So just trust yourself, back yourself, that you know what it is, and hopefully that'll take away some of the nerves. Talk like a normal person. I can't stress that enough. Just talk like a normal person. We are taught to write conversationally. We're taught to talk in conversations. That's what they want. They don't want you looking at your notes, quoting different things or different figures or anything. You can have notes there that just as a backup, but just get into it as if you were telling someone that you know. So just think, you know, here's my mate, I'm just going to sit across the table from her and tell her, I'm going to answer her questions like I would tell my mum, or like I would tell my friend, or picture somebody who is the target audience that you want, and I'm just going to tell it like I would tell it to them. Be normal. Yeah.
And as a print journalist, my heart sinks when I ask someone a question, they say, oh, well, actually I've just written it all down here for you. How do I quote, I've just written it all down here for you? Yeah? I still need you to say it, and that comes back to that conversation, getting it in your words, because that's the colour, that's what people connect to. At the end of the day, people connect to people. We need that element in our stories. And don't use jargon. If the majority of the population doesn't understand what you're talking about, if the person that you're talking to doesn't understand what you're talking about, that's a good hint. Try to stay away from jargon and just put it into layman's terms. So what we always say for print is assume your reader is about 13 years old. That's what you need to be, that's how you need to be explaining your stuff so that a 13-year-old will understand it.
And they mightn't have been following all the news stories and all the developments in your industry either, so you may need to don't assume that stuff.
And it comes back to what Penny said before, you don't always need to be the talent, and sometimes we don't want you to be the talent, because if we've spoken to you for the last 6 times, we probably want someone fresh. So this is how you choose the right talent to put up.
And if you're working on a program and there's someone in that program who's got an awesome story to tell, then your stuff can be the boring details at the end. And I'm sorry to say that, but people are going to engage with the story more if they hear a 5-year-old telling the best story ever. And then they'll go, hang on, how come, what's going on? Why is this 5-year-old involved? How did they get involved? Oh, righto, okay, I can see it down there. So think about who is going to be the best person to tell this story. You can give all the details and facts that you need to do later. Or the other thing is, if you don't quite trust the 5-year-old will nail it, do a joint interview. And you can go there with them. The 5-year-old's just, I mean, James is ninja grandma. She might not be so good on the IT stuff, but she's great at being a ninja. So if James goes along with her, it's a good combination.
Think of doing something that will stand out. So if you can offer that you're going to sing in the interview for us, if you're going to rap your interview to us, if you're going to do something that's really out there, that's going to stand out from everything else, great, we want to hear about it.
If you're going to have high profile people too, if you can get them and they're good, it's good as well.
Yeah. Other important stuff you should know.
TV news editors, they get in about 8, I think, but I usually bring them at about 8:30 just to make sure that we're on the list for the day. That's when they're making their decisions about where they're sending their cameras that day. Just call them and you just say, you might have seen the media release that I put out yesterday, or the media alert, here's the rest of the details. I just want to know whether or not you'll be able to make it and if there's anything else that I can do to make it worthwhile or whatever. They're pretty nice and they are sorting out their day at that time, so you tell them why again, face to face or on the phone, and they might go, oh yeah, forgot about that. Oh, I read that yesterday, forgot, yeah.
It's a very fine line between following up and nagging. We hate nagging, we love following up to reminders. So to give you an example, Penny, with her other hat on, contacted me last week for a story. She sent an email and then she followed me up a couple of hours later with a call just saying, oh, there's this great event, here's a bit more background to it, blah, blah, blah. That's fantastic, that's following up. What's not following up is sending an email an hour later, ringing, saying, did you get my email? I haven't heard back from you. I just wanted to check that you've got my email. And then the next day calling, I still haven't heard from you about this event that I've got on. And then the next day doing the same thing. I spoke to someone in your office yesterday about such and such event. I just, you know, is someone going to be coming to that? And then calling me 10 minutes before the event to say, I just wanted to check that you're actually coming to the event. Like, it's a fine line, but I think we all know the difference between following up and nagging. Yeah, so it's great to remind us because we're human, we forget things, we might have forgotten to put it in our calendar. So do that follow-up, but don't nag.
And it's also good for your planning. You can say, I'm just trying to get an idea of who's going to be there, so I can work out what vision to have or what I need. Did it get in your diary? That's all I need to know. So they're really busy. You want to be quick, you want to be sharp, you want to get their attention.
Yeah, but having said that as well, being able to offer them something in the phone call, so you're not just ringing to find out what they're doing, say, oh, I didn't quite make it into the media release, but so-and-so is going to be there, which will be a cracking yarn for you. Yep, so just add in that little something extra.
Oh, that's like if we sort of touched on that, but if the media release goes out to everybody, as they do, as a journo, I don't feel like I need to reply to a media release. But if then, you know, Pia sends it on to me, just saying, hi Ben, I want to know if you got this or not. I reckon what will be good for you guys is this part, let me know. Then I've got it right back to them. Because I feel a bit crap about it.
We've touched on it already. Pitch stories that are shareable. If people are talking about it, if it's a hot topic issue, they're shareable. That's a great way to go. And share everything. Share. That's the crux of it. That's what we're about these days. So if you want your stories to get into our outlets, that's what you guys need to be about too.
And look, there's heaps more detail about specifics of different programs, about different mediums and all of that sort of stuff. That, you know, if there's specific questions that are related to what you're doing in your project, I mean, this is the time you can ask us pretty much anything you want. I no longer work for the media, so I have no more secrets to keep. I'm happy to open the vault. No, it's all about just making it easy for the journalists. At the end of the day, we want a great story. We want to make sure our listeners or our readers get what they want. And we also too, I think that, you know, it's our reputation's on the line as journalists. If you've got a byline, if it's my voice on the radio, then I don't want to tell crappy stories. I don't want to bore people. I want it to be good. I want it to be different. So you're always thinking about your own reputation too. Over to you guys.
Questions?
What feedback do you get on the quality of your stories? So you mentioned the comments and sharing online, but what else are you looking for to know that you've done well?
I think the big thing's engagement. So it's not so much about reach, it's not so much about what people are saying, it's about how they're saying it and how they're talking to other people. So because we're only the, tell me if you agree with this or not, we're the in-betweeners. If they're commenting on the quality of the story, that's different. But if they're commenting on the story, then that means we hit the nail on the head. You know, it's stuff that, it's water cooler conversation. It's stuff that people want to talk about, that they've got opinions on. So it's not, we're the mediators, if you like. It's not for us to decide whether, we want people to say great stuff about this project. We're not interested in that. We just want people to talk about the project because then therefore it means that it is a story they're interested in. Yeah.
How do you measure that on radio?
Well, talkback is a big thing. Text messages is a big thing. When people talk to you afterwards, if people follow up and say, like it might be a lobby group or someone like that that follows up saying, I heard you talking about this the other day, we also do something in that space that we'd like to talk about. All of those kind of things, and specifically on social media too, more and more these days.
Yeah. And for print and online, it really comes down to basically looking at the data. So the number of people who viewed a particular story, what the bounce rate was, how far down the story they read before they clicked out. All of that sort of stuff is what we look at to determine how successful a story was. Having said that, I think particularly online there are two types of stories. One is just we want traffic, give us traffic to our website, which of those clicks in, and we're not looking so much for engagement there, we're looking for a high hit rate. And then there are the other stories, which are generally the longer stories, which we're looking really much more for engagement than just straight click-through rates.
Anything else? Yeah.
So, I'm interested in what your thoughts are on what business stories are of real interest to the community. Like, so watching the online, it seems like the closure of Townsend's or Fitzy's or whatever gets hundreds and hundreds of comments, and everyone who hasn't supported them for years remembers going there as a kid and was disappointed. But, are there types of stories you're thinking, well, in your professional side, you think, I wish Launceston had more stories about this sort of thing rather than, so-and-so's going to hire one more person. That's not shifting the bar.
So nostalgia is big. Nostalgia is
Yeah.
always going to be big. Memories, that's what people like to share and they like to
personal stuff again.
talk about. But that said, I did notice something that the examiner did, particularly around those three. What's next for Launceston? If we don't have Fitzy's, we don't have Townsend's, and we don't have Virtuals, what's next? That's your opportunity to go in and you do what is the new Launceston? What's it looking like? Where are we going to eat? What kind of food outlets do we want to have in the city? Are people buying their stationery? I mean, I don't, whatever it is. I was always very, when you sit and you listen to, I would listen to 25 news forces a day, I was always solutions focused. So as a journalist, that was my thing. I was not going to get another politician on every day to tell me what the other party was doing wrong. I wasn't going to get people on to whinge. I always wanted stuff to be positive. News bulletins will often be reactive, that's what they do. But in the editorial side of things, so the story side of things, if you like, people are very happy to be solutions focused. So if you can offer a positive solution story, I reckon that's going to be gold. Particularly at the moment in Lonnie, with lots of changes happening around the city deal and that sort of stuff. Now's your time to make an impact, and people love it's Australian culture. They love the underdog. They love the person, the battler. If you can tell stories along those lines, they're going to be picked up, whether that's right or wrong. I'm not making a comment on that. I don't know why we don't also celebrate our big businesses that are employing 1 billion people and doing really well for the economy. We should be doing that too, but we tend to love the stories of battlers, I guess. So that's a good way to get your story noticed.
And I think also, once again, to flip it and don't think of it as a business story, think of it as a people story.
Yeah.
Because the people starting that business, the people working in that business, they all have stories. They're the
That's the
stories that
battler.
we
Yeah.
want. Yeah.
Doesn't have to be a butler, you can turn around to whatever you want, the person who's winning. Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, that's what Peter points out, it's the person's story rather than the business story. Yeah.
Let's say you've got something really big. You're launching something that you think is really exciting, it's possibly of statewide significance and that sort of thing. What would you both do if you just wanted to get it everywhere if you could? So what's kind of would you do a media release and then send it to the papers and try and follow up with radio and send it to, what do you think would be the best way to tackle it?
Do you know first?
Yeah, so I would sit down and have a bit of a look at the different media outlets and see which one was going to suit my great fantastic thing best, and then I would prioritise based on that. So it might be sending out a release that's embargoed until tomorrow, but I'll call the papers and give them the drop so they can have it on the front page. So when the embargo lifts at 6 o'clock, it's already on the front page. And then, as we were saying, it would be ringing the news editor at about 8:30 when they get in and say, oh, I don't know if you've seen such and such a story, but there's also this awesome angle to it. And getting really clever about offering different people different angles, different talent. There's nothing worse than hearing the same person talk about the same story across every single news outlet. So offer up different talent and just be a bit smart about what you're offering to who, and identify which medium is going to have the biggest impact for you.
If there's a journo too who you know is particularly interested in what you do and can set the agenda of the day, go to them first, I would, and then push it out to other people. So what you could do is have a bit of a brief media release and send it to the 4 people that you want to pitch to, just saying, this is going to arrive in your inbox later today. I'm really keen to go with you on this. Are you interested? So I think you want it to be talked about with a agenda setter.
And just a quick jargon check on that. If you're embargoing something, is that basically you just put a line in the press release, this is embargoed until this time?
Yeah, so embargo means that you're not allowed to report on it until a certain time. So quite often you'll see embargoes around stats and certain things like that. So a new report's being released. You want the journalist to have had the story written, so they've got all the details, but it's not actually allowed to be printed until this time, because that's when it's officially being released. So I put it in really big bold letters in red up the top, so that it does not get missed.
And whatever you do, don't get your embargo wrong, because that's happened. And then we get an angry call saying, why is this story up online? And it says, because your embargo said it could be. So check your details, make sure your embargo is correct.
So yeah, it's sort of about being a bit sneaky, but it's not really sneaky, it's just being smart. I mean, if you've got a great fishing story, call Leon. He's the guy for it. He will talk about it during the day, and then it'll end up being on the news that night. If you've got a launch that's happening at 12 o'clock, and then it'll be on the front page next morning.
And also, I would say it's not as hard as it sounds to get to know these people. Like, we all have Google. Google's our friend. You know, Google ABC Northern Tasmania and just flick through the people and you'll get a bit of a sense of things. So it's not as hard to do as it sounds.
And just calling people, it's amazing how many people don't call. Like I don't want you to talk to me for half an hour, because I don't have half an hour, but I've definitely got 5 minutes. And you'll see if I'm interested if I start asking you questions back. If I'm not asking you questions back, then you just go, I'll send you through the media release now, I just want to introduce myself. So you'll get a sense of that pretty easy. Anything else?
Can you pitch your app to us?
My app?
Yeah, or your new business.
I'm a new business. Yeah, I can. I suppose I can. So I've come from a media and communications background. I worked in marketing before this, and what there is a problem with in Tasmania is the communication around preventative health. We are so excited about our hospital systems and the fact that it's broken. Why are people ending up in our hospital systems? Because they're not healthy to start with. So where does the money need to be spent? Getting them healthy to start with. So basically what we do is we run a lot of community programs to try and make people take responsibility for their own health. But it needs to be a combined effort. We put public and private money into the acute health system, so let's also put it into the preventative health system as well. So that's a lot of what I do. I've come together with my sister, who's been working in that space for about 20 years, and it's got a communications problem, so I'm trying to fix it. We're working with schools, community organisations, not-for-profits, governments, everybody. But our business is called Healthy Tasmania, and when we talk about health, we talk about it in the holistic sense. So yes, individual and physical health, but also community health, places like this, society health, so people come together and talk, and economic health. If you're not a healthy person, then you can't go to work, you can't have a job, you can't come to things like this because you're dealing with 3 or more chronic illnesses. Here's the detail for you. 45% of Tasmanians live with 3 or more chronic illnesses. How can we have people going to work and just our society functioning when people are sick? So something needs to be done about it, and we're trying to make a difference. How's that? I just made that up.
Can I just point out the thing that came through then? Kenny loves what she does, and it's really obvious she was really passionate. The thing that we want above all is be passionate with us. If I'm listening to the radio, even if it's a topic that I'm really, really interested in, I'll switch off if the person talking isn't passionate. If I'm listening to something and it's a topic that I would not be interested in a million years, I will keep listening if they're passionate, because people get excited by people being excited. So be passionate.
We all love Tassie, that's why we're here. It's an awesome place, and everything that you guys are doing are making Tassie a better place. And you know, the secret's out that we've got great scenery and we've got good food and wine, but it's the rest of the stuff that we're doing here in Tassie that, you know, with my journalism background, but also too, this is what I'm trying to do through my business, is make sure people know about all this other awesome stuff that happens in Tassie. We've got some massive challenges to fix, but there's so many people who are doing work to fix those things. And we've got to tell people about it, yeah. Which is why the media is important and why pitching for it's important. Tells our Tasmanian story better.